All right, so we will go, do we need public? We don't need public, that was public comment. Consent calendar, all matters listed on our consent calendar are considered to be routine and can be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time that council votes on one motion unless members of the city council, staff, or public request specific items to be discussed or removed from the consent calendar for individual action. We do have a request to remove item number 3, so moved. And I will entertain a motion for items to approve 2 and 4, unless there's any public comment on the consent calendar.
Through the mayor,
Yes.
consent calendar.
One second. Do we have any public comment on consent calendar items?
No, we don't.
Okay, go ahead, Manny.
Through the mayor, I'd like to make a recommendation of the consent calendar for item number 2 and 4.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, item number 3. Grace.
Through the mayor, I am just simply asking for an extension on the closing of the initial application date, which is March 31st, considering the coronavirus and all of these other issues that we are facing.
All right, do you have a suggested extension?
When do we begin the budget process, Diana? Just trying to coordinate around that to help.
The budget subcommittee meetings are scheduled for April 3rd, 9th, and 10th. And then we have our first budget workshop towards the end of May, but finance will have to have the draft budget prepared a couple weeks in advance of that.
So 3rd, 9th, and 10th?
Of April, yes, for
April.
the budget subcommittee meetings.
So would it be appropriate to request, I know from the 31st to the 3rd doesn't seem a whole lot, perhaps the 9th, because the meeting would be able to meet then, or to say April 8th, because the meeting would be on the 9th or the 10th?
Through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Espandola, just a clarification. Are you talking about the items that would be separately identified through the budgetary process, or are you talking about the quarterly ones? Because there's two different ones there, and that's what I was trying to...
Councilman Shaw, I was reading in the analysis section of the report, and in the analysis, it states the initial application is due date will be March 31st. So the initial application, and then we have in here the approval process and the quarterly. There was no defined date for the quarterly ones.
Right, and that's why I was kind of curious on that myself, because with going to a quarterly rotation with an allocation, it seems like they would naturally be able to apply quarterly. And my thinking, being on the budget subcommittee, is if we have the allotment and we're talking about the quarterly allotment, then we could give them an opportunity to clear through middle of June, 1st of July, basically the beginning of that quarter to do that. If we're talking about the long-standing ones, that's where I was kind of confused, which ones we were talking about.
Yeah, the long-standing ones, we have an agreement. It's going to go through the budget process, which is, April 3rd, 9th, 10th, and the other workshop. I'm good with that. I'm talking about, so maybe the initial application date does not need to be included for March 31st for the first quarter, or unless we're thinking the first quarter in June sometime like you're suggesting. That's the only clarification I was asking on this particular piece.
Okay, and that I would, Mr. Mayor, I would probably offer up that if we're talking about the quarterly allotment, that the applications are due by the first day of the quarter, that we would be, for that allotment. So that means that basically our first allotment would be July 1. That's when they would be due, and they have plenty of time in the light of all the recent events.
Well, let me read this one section so that there's clarity to my question, okay? It says that the city manager's office will send out notification to interested organizations annually in February and March. The applications will be accepted, and I apologize, I have a mint in my mouth, for funding for the next fiscal year, July 1st through the 30th of each year. The initial application due date will be March 31st for consideration as part of the annual budget. So the applications will be reviewed by staff for completeness and eligibility. Applicants will also be accepted through the year, applications will also be accepted throughout this year for council's consideration. So it sounds to me, now that I'm reading it again, it's that annual one. We're wanting them by the 31st for the annual ones, and then additional ones for the quarterly.
Right. And, I mean, we kind of know what those longstanding ones are, and in the light of the COVID-19 event that's going on, I would be fine as part of that subcommittee, even going through the middle of April for them to submit, because we kind of know what they are, what we as a council have already identified as the long-standing things, which we know that the summer stroll and those Christmas stroll is
Right.
ideally ones of those. So I would have no problem in extending that deadline, even while the subcommittee's working. Have we had any of those applications turned in yet?
I've only received one so far.
Okay.
We have sent out notices already to everybody.
Everybody I could think of.
Been contacted, okay.
Okay. I'm flexible with whichever, because I think we've got an understanding as a council what we meant by long-standing, and the quarterlies. I think, just for a point of a clarification, that those requests need to be in by the first day of that quarter, would be my suggestion, just so there's a finite time.
For the quarterly, okay.
They all come back to all of us anyway.
Yeah.
Those.
I would be, as long as it doesn't hold up our process, that's what I was asking. So if we look towards April, mid of April, because we know that they have a long-standing relationship with us and we're still in that process. Okay.
Those folks are longstanding, they know pretty much the routine, they've already been contacted, hopefully they're paying attention, even right now. So we should be okay. But give them a little bit more leeway. No
I'm just
problem.
asking for a little bit more time for them.
All right, so you have a calendar in front of you, a date in
Yeah.
April?
Well, tax day is April 15th. It might be extended, so we could add it to that date.
April 15th?
Is that a Friday?
That's actually a Wednesday. Since most of them already know, I would actually offer April 7th, give them an extra week past the initial deadline. And that way, as the subcommittee is working through it, we know that what we were thinking kind of lines up with them before we finish up on the 10th, before it comes back to the main council. So I would say the 7th.
Yeah, I was
be a good
open to
day.
the 8th or the 7th, what have you. I just don't want them to miss out on this opportunity because their priority right now may be on their business or the health of their own family, so, or of others.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I think the 7th would be good, and then I think this council can be very flexible with that, so.
I hope we would be, okay. I would be in agreement with the 7th and also knowing that there's flexibility in that. Okay?
All right,
Mayor,
yes.
just a clarification, this is a one-time date change to allow for the coronavirus, and that the policy as written would continue to apply in future years, is that correct?
Yes,
Thank you for the clarification.
all right. And we need a motion.
So I motion that, that the date would be a temporary for this year because of the coronavirus, to extend the initial application due date from March, to change it from March 31st to April 7th.
All right, I can second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? None. Thank you very much, Grace.